Hello, Kelly here with Kelly Soroka Life, and this is class 4 in Lessons from Lenormand. So far we have done an introduction, and you can find out all about the book and the materials that I'm using, the decks that I'm using. And then the next video is an introduction to the book and to part 1 of the book. And then the last video we did was class 3, where we actually started going into the cards. And in that video, we went over the first 6 cards. So I'm doing 6 cards at a time. And since there are 36 cards in the Lenormand deck, there will be that many classes of the cards that we'll go over, and each one will also go over a way to practice and use the cards and start reading with the cards. And then at the end, once we get through all the cards, the last one, we're going to look at some special layouts just for Lenormand, the cross spread and changing a fortune, and the grand tableau, and then working with Lenormand houses. So that is the schedule for this lessons from Lenormand for this class that we're doing together. And there is you will see in the description box, there will be a link to a PDF, and this one will cover, it'll have the schedule on it, and it'll cover the cards that we did this time. And there's also some journal pages that you can find. And so you can go along and take notes as we do the class. So make sure to check that out and get that and use the PDF that has the schedule on it. And I don't have a date schedule for these classes because I didn't really want to say that they would come out on a certain day because I wasn't sure, when they would come out, and I didn't want to say they would be out on a certain time and then not be able to get the video up in time. So I'm just doing these as we go along, and about every couple of weeks I've gotten the next video up. So this one's coming out the first week of the last week of November. It's November 24th. And so a couple of weeks later, you can probably look for class 5. So just again, like and subscribe, and then you'll know when it comes out, and you'll be notified when the next class comes out. So today, like I said, we're talking about the next 6 cards. In the last class, we did the first 6 cards, which is number 1, Rider, number 2, Clover, number 3, Ship, number 4, House, number 5, Tree, and number 6, Clouds. And we looked at some ways to just combine the cards together and combine the keywords together so you can actually start reading with the cards, even with just those first 6 cards. So if you're interested in that and you missed the first class, and go back and definitely watch that one so you can get all the keywords for those first 6 cards. And today for class 4, we're going into the next cards, which are number 7, Snake, number 8, Coffin, number 9, Bouquet, number 10, Scythe, number 11, Whip, and number 12, Birds. So the Lenormand cards, if you're not familiar with them, they're all numbered. And most of the cards that you will see will have, at the very least, a number, a picture, and the word that is like snake. And so you'll see that on the card. Now, some of them will have the playing card correspondences, which I'm not going to go into because I don't know that much about the correspondences with the playing cards, but you might see that. Some of them may have some extra things on the cards, some extra details, but at a minimum, they'll have those things on them. So you'll be able to use that. And the numbers are important because as we get down into using the cards in the houses and using the grand tableau, the numbers will be important because each of the cards, like the ones we did last week, number 1 is Rider. And so number 1, when you do the whole grand tableau, number 1 is the Rider is in that house. And so that position, when you do the grand tableau, that position and you put another card on top of it, which is probably not going to be the rider because you've got 36 cards and you're dealing them out. But there's going to be another card that is going to be in that space. And so I know it's a little complicated and it sounds complicated, especially if you don't really know anything about Lenormand. And it's probably the most complicated thing about working with Lenormand. But as you work with the cards and as you do the grand tableau and as you work with these more and more, you'll get used to the numbers and you'll get used to the houses and all of that. But just, still play with the cards. Don't feel like that you have to memorize all of these things because I definitely don't have them memorized. And I still have to look at, where the houses are when I do a grand tableau. But that's part of learning and it's part of using your intuition. It's part of using these divinatory skills. So, but just kind of get in a habit of looking at the numbers and trying to memorize the numbers as you look at the cards so that when you do get to the grand tableau, you have a little bit of an idea. And then as you work more, if you really like Lenormand and you like doing these spreads, then it'll come to you and you'll just learn it as you go along. So for this class, we're focusing on the next 6 cards. We did cards 1 through 6 in the last video, and we're doing cards 7 through 12 in this video. So I do have some slides. Let me share those with you. So again, this is class 4. And where is the present? Oh, here it is, present button. And present. You can see this slide's nice and big on your screen. So this is class 4. And this is just the schedule. So when you download the PDF that I have attached, you'll see this schedule and you'll be able to follow along as the classes go along. So we're on class 4 today. And then this is from the last class, and this is from the introduction of the book. And I am using and you'll see this too on this PDF printout, and below you'll see all the things that I'm using. So I am using Rana George's book, The Essential Lenormand, and this is the book that I'm using for this class. And then I'm also using Rana George's Lenormand deck, which looks like this. And then I'm using, along with it, is kind of just kind of a comparison and just kind of doing a little deck study because I just got this deck. And this is the Wicked Tales Lenormand. And I'll have links to all of these in the description box so you can find these if you want to. But the book that I am using, and this is what this comes out of from the introduction and just her introduction of the Lenormand and how she thinks of it and the ways that she has gone about categorizing the cards and giving you information about the cards and the keywords because the keywords are the most important thing in Lenormand, learning the keywords and then kind of putting those keywords together and to make, to do the reading. And so in this book that she has different contexts for the card meanings, because you can just be very simple with Lenormand and have, 1 or 2 keywords for each card and then do a whole reading just with those keywords. But after, reading Lenormand for her whole life, Rana George has put in here some different categories of the different meanings that she's come across with using the cards. So there's different contexts and she lists those, and you will see with each card she has meanings for all of these contexts. So in future she has 2 or 3 words about that. A man or a woman, is this how would it describe a man or a woman? In your workplace, what are ways that this card might present itself? And it goes through all of these categories: health, body and spirit, money, time or timing, advice or action, orientation, objects and areas. And with each card, she also has, along with these meanings, she also has some personal anecdotes, traditional meanings, and combinations and examples. So you hear a little bit about her and how she has used the card, or has come across the card, or has some way it has come up for her in her life. And then the traditional meanings, because there are very traditional meanings to Lenormand, and how that there is a way that traditionally these cards have been used. And they have, just like tarot, they've changed, come been done differently over the years. But she kind of goes back and gives you some of those traditional meanings, and then we'll have combinations and examples. So for each card, she'll have it with another card and kind of tell you what those two cards, if she drew those cards together. And those are really good because you can see how putting cards together works, and how moving cards around works. And so it's really interesting to see those together. And a lot of Lenormand books, just like the Wicked Tales book, the guidebook that goes with that guidebook does the same thing, and has a card and then puts another card with it. What would these two mean together? And that's the basis of learning, and that's what we did in the last class, is doing just some of those combination drills. And we're going to expand it this time at the end, and so that will be fun. And then important points, and I put this in the last slide, but I thought, I'm just going to add this because these are just some really good things to keep in mind as you're learning about Lenormand. That when you're doing any kind of divination, time is malleable. And especially when you're working with deities, or working with the universe, or working with your higher self, their time is different than our kind of linear time. And so looking at those things, and looking and trying for everything to be just, step by step by step, sometimes it's going to work and sometimes it doesn't. You might get a reading and think, well, how does this work? I want to know about something that's coming up, but it might not be something it might be something that's cyclical, that's coming around. And so just keep that in mind. And then the Lenormand cards all have an orientation. So it'll be a positive card, a negative card, or a neutral card. And like anything, there's a little bit of flow between them. I mean, some of them are positive cards, and you can definitely, that's a positive card. And then some of them are negative cards, and that's a negative card. Some of them are neutral, and they really depend on the other cards. And that is why, we do these combination drills, and we do these answer lines, and we do the box spread that we're going to do next week, or the next time in the next class. But looking at these, because you read them in usually, left to right fashion, you're looking at the cards, and you're looking at what came before, what's in the present, and what's going to be in the future. And if there's something that's negative that has happened in your past, or it's in a past position in where you're reading, then that really makes a difference if it's a negative card that's in your future. And the card that it's beside, that's going to make a big difference as well. So, but knowing those orientations, and knowing that something is a positive card, knowing something is a negative card, knowing something that's neutral, that really helps you kind of make a good reading. And then personal anecdotes. These are things that you will just gain over time, that you can start gathering on your own. If you're very new to Lenormand, you can start writing down readings when you get them, and interesting things about the cards that you're like, that's different. I've never come across that. Or something that's very personal to you, because all of these cards are going to be very personal to you. Like last week we did the house card, and to everyone grew up in and lives in a different kind of house, whether you live in a traditional traditional house, a suburban house, or you live in an apartment, or you live in, a shared space, or, whatever it is that you live in, the house, it means something, but it has, a meaning to you too. What does house mean to you? And so these personal anecdotes and that you gain over time are really important if you want to, really go deeper with the cards. And so, and it's again something that you don't want to push. You don't want to say, I have to memorize these and I have to understand all these, ones that come up for you and you think, oh, I like that, I understand that, that makes sense to me, or that really is something that is important to me, that I really like or enjoy. It's going to come to you. And then as you work with other cards that might be more difficult or more ones that you don't really relate to, then you'll gain that over time. And then the nuance, she talks a lot about nuance, and because there are, very kind of specific keywords to the cards. But then again, as you keep working with them and you keep going deeper with them, you're going to find these kind of nuances. And we're going to talk about one of them today. One of the cards that we're going to talk about is Bouquet. And you'll see it when we get to that slide. And it's very similar to the garden card that we're going to do, which is card 20. So we're going to do that, in a later class. But the bouquet, and so you can kind of think, well, flowers, a garden, something growing and something growing. But it's very, to me, the nuance there is, is the bouquet is more like an object, and the garden is more like a place. And so those two, you can see, kind of those nuances there. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get to that slide, since we're doing bouquet today. And then one of the things that's in here, a lot of the cards have to do with health, have to do with your personal health or the health of people around you, or if you're doing a reading for somebody else, it might be their health. And if you don't feel comfortable doing a specific health reading with the cards, like tree is one we did in the last class, and that definitely has a connection to health, or it can. And if you're not comfortable, then don't do it. If you don't feel comfortable doing a medical reading and something comes up and you're not sure, you always say, refer to a professional, and because you definitely don't want to read something, or to overthink it, or to overlook something. And so you can always have that as, just say, you don't, it's not something that you do. And so you can talk about it in very general terms. And and Rana George talks a lot about that in the book. So if you do get the book, you can read what she says about it and how she talks about it and how she does it in her readings. So that's, again, just some points in the book that I think that are important as we're learning the cards. All right, so now we're going to do the next 6 cards. So we're doing 7 through 12 in this video. And so we're going to start out with snake. And snake is number 7. Now, snake can be a very menacing card. It can mean treachery or deceit. But it can also mean, because snake does have a very, kind of a dual meaning, it can also mean wisdom, something that you've gained over time, and that you have, kind of brought in through, lots of windy roads. And so, you've gotten the wisdom. It can be trouble, difficulties, it can be inconvenience, it can be envy. So it can be any of these things. So when you see snake, this is one of these that, it's negative, and you think, oh, something is going on here. So you want to pay attention to that. And you see the snake card over on the left here, this is Rana George's deck here, and she has the snake in her. You can see the number here is the 7 here. And this is the playing card. She has a playing card correspondences here, which I'm not really going into right now, but you can see it, what card it corresponds to. And then over here, and this is why I wanted to put in this Wicked Tales of Norman, because it has kind of a different take on the cards. And it's good to get, just since we're using Raina George's book and her deck, I wanted to put something else in there that kind of you could see a different viewpoint. You could see how this is, it's still very traditional because it's got, the number 7 and it's got the snake and it's got the picture of a snake, but it has a little twist to it. This one has the snake in the Jack in the Box. And so if you had Jack in the Box when you were young, and some people, might really like Jack in the Boxes and like that surprise and like, just not knowing and having, the Jack in the Box just spring up at you. And, some people don't like it so much. And so it's one of those things that a snake can be something that is surprising, something that is coming up that you didn't expect, trouble that you didn't expect, a difficulty. Things are going along fine, and then all of a sudden, there's this difficulty comes up. It could be something, you got a new boss or a coworker, or you're something changed, and so you think that it's not that big a deal, but then you might do a reading on it and the snake comes up, and so you look around and see, well, what are the difficulties and what are the things that, how can I not be surprised by this? How can I, and especially if you don't like surprises, how can you then, to make this into how can you be aware of the troubles, and how can you take care of it? And so knowing something might be coming up, maybe that this is something that is coming up. So, maybe you are getting a new boss, and you're kind of looking at this and not really knowing, and so the snake comes up, and then you can draw a couple of more cards and say, well, what can I do? How can I be prepared for this, this kind of surprise that, maybe this person, decides to change all the schedules. And so you might get a card or two that leans into that. And you can say, well, this is coming up. How can I deal with this? How can I be prepared for it? And so it's kind of taking that surprise element out of it. It's being aware of it. And then in the Wicked Tales of Norman, in the guidebook, there are reflection questions that are really good. And I thought that they were, and I wanted to pick out, a few of them here for the cards that we're doing. And so for you just to reflect on the card, so you can get a little bit, and this is that part of that, going deeper with the card, having that little nuance with the card. So what do snakes represent to you? Because snakes are very magical. They're very much magical creatures, and you come across snakes a lot especially if you work with dark goddesses. A lot of them have snakes as their correspondences, or as their familiars, or as the animal that represents them. And so, what do snakes represent to you? And a lot of people do not like snakes, and a lot of people just, are very much, afraid of snakes and fear what they represent. And so that might be something that represents to you. What does the snake represent to you? Is it something that do you have that kind of magical aspect to it that you've been working with it, or is it something new to you? Is snake magic, or the snake card something kind of new to you? And you need to remember also that when this comes up, it is, a negative card and something you need to be aware of it, but like, it can be charmed. The snake can be charmed. You can do things. You can figure out how to work with the trouble, with the difficulty, and make this card not so menacing. And that's why it says negative to neutral, because it can be something just very neutral as well. In time, it could be 7 days or 7 weeks or 7 months, or it could be July. So this is the number 7, the snake card. And this one is interesting. And I talked a little bit about this last time with the house. And I had the house card and the snake card underneath it. And the snake card a lot of times means the pipes in your house, because they're kind of, wiggly. And so yeah, it can mean that. And I got that in a reading, and I had the house and I had the snake underneath it. And we did have something, plumbing happen, and we had to get repaired. And so, knowing that, and, being aware of it, and thinking about that, and thinking, well, I have the house and I have the snake underneath it. So maybe there's something that I'm not looking at. Maybe there's something that, I need to be aware of. And so it can be something like that. And I think that's why it says negative to neutral, because it could be something neutral-ish, because that's something. It was, in my case, it wasn't anything that was that serious, but it was something that, I needed to take care of. So that's my personal anecdote with the snake card. All right. So number 8, this is Coffin. And this is endings, death, danger, something that's a big hurdle. It can mean sickness, financial loss, discouragement, depression. So this one, definitely a negative card, definitely something that means an ending to something. And it's very similar to the death card in tarot, that it has that meaning of an ending, something that is ending, something that is transformative, something that is going away, is changing, and something, and to have it and to be aware of it is really good, because you can see. And again, once you start, it's really hard to kind of put this into context, since we just are talking about the one card. But when you have this, and when you start looking at this and looking at this card and putting it with another card, then you'll see how the coffin, you'll see what it means, and you'll see, is it something that I need to look out for? So you might have the coffin with the ship card. And so maybe you're getting ready to go on a trip, and you have the coffin and the ship. And so it might be something that, all the airports get snowed in, or something like that. And so, and you're not able to go. And so that's the kind of thing that you will see with the coffin, and you will see how those cards kind of work together. And it might be something that, and if you get it like in a more of a health, in a more of a health situation, and it could be something that a sickness. But you can also, if you're aware of it, then you can take steps to make sure you keep yourself healthy, and things like that. So it's that card, and it's very much dependent on the other cards around it. So you want to definitely look at the card and see what other cards are around it, and ask really good questions. So when these cards come up, then you will know the reason why the card came up, and you can look at it. So and you see over here, the Wicked Tales Lenormand, there's a vampire kind of sitting around this coffin. And I thought that was very interesting, because that when something ends, then something else begins. And so it's kind of this vampire that doesn't die, but then is standing with a coffin of something that has died. And so it's that very much that kind of duality between those two things. And you'll see it as you keep reading, and looking at the cards and looking at the cards in combination. How does that Coffin card, what is it working with? And if it's before a card, how does that affect it? If it's after a card, how does that affect it? And how can you go into that kind of nuance with it and get the meaning of the card? And then the reflection here, the question is, what do you need to grieve? Is there something that has ended in for you, or has that yeah, has ended for you, that you might still need to grieve at this point? So this card can stand for 8 days, 8 weeks, 8 months, or August. It's something that is slow. So it's not something that is ending, because we're going to look at something that's more ending, that's faster. But this is something that is that's over time. It's a negative card, and it can mean something just like maybe you just need to stay in bed. Maybe you just need a day of rest, and you just need to just close the blinds and crawl into bed and have a good rest. And this is number 9, Bouquet, and this is the card that I talked a little bit about in the beginning. And so this is a positive card. It means joy and beauty and happiness, admiration and contentment and warmth and affection and appreciation. So all of these things is for bouquet, because bouquets are usually something that is given, when you've done something. You give somebody a bouquet for when they get married, or a bouquet when they're have a performance, or something when you are celebrating and you have bouquets of flowers. And so it's definitely something that is celebratory. It's something that it means has that kind of gift giving motive to it. And you can see in the Wicked Tales, Lenormand, how it's a ghost standing with the bouquet, and standing with it, to give it. And so it's that part of giving without ulterior motive. So it's just giving and sharing and having something that you're giving because you're just truly appreciating another person, or you're truly appreciating yourself maybe, and you're giving yourself some flowers. And so here, this is kind of the nuance that we talked about. And so bouquet is very similar to the garden card, because there's flowers and there's flowers, and there's something that's grown that's really pretty, but the bouquet is more an object, and the garden is more of a place. And so looking, you'll get those kind of nuances as you go through the cards. So again, positive card, something that comes very quickly, that just comes up and is wonderful and beautiful in the moment. And it can also mean 9 days, 9 weeks, 9 months, or September. Number 10 is Scythe. And this can also mean an ending to something, because it's something that's being cut. And but it's fast. Coffin is something that's kind of ending, but it's slower, with kind of a transformation with it. Scythe is something that's sharp, that's ready to cut, that's clearing, that can be a danger. It can be very sudden. It can be something that's slicing. It can be razor sharp discussions. It can also be carelessness. And so those are the key words for Scythe. And here in the Wicked Tales, Lenormand, this is the person that's behind here is Kronos, which is the god of time. And so the time, and we think of, because we see the death with the scythe a lot of times depicted. And so it's something that is at the end, that is the time is done. And so Kronos here is kind of the symbol here of that ending, that point where it's no more. And but it's got a very interesting duality as well. And this is what I liked about this card, because you think about the scythe and how, even though we kind of tend to think of it as the death card, with death and the scythe, it is an implement of harvesting, and it is something that people used for many, many generations, years, to harvest crops. And that was the only way that they made it through the winter, and their animals made it through the winter. And they survived, another year by harvesting these crops. And so even though it is a death and they were causing the death of these plants, and but it was still necessary. It was still necessary for other things to live. And so, I really like that kind of duality of this. And there is that duality in this card, because it can be danger and it can be something clearing out. And sometimes it might not be something that you want to be cleared out. Sometimes you might be trying to, it might be a friendship that has just, the other person is just not interested in being friends anymore. And so this scythe would come along and just kind of, just kind of clear it away. But it could also be, something, maybe, a workplace relationship or situation that was very toxic, and the scythe comes away and cuts it away. And so it's something that can be, you can not be happy about, or you can be happy about it. And so there is that duality with this card. So that's why here it's more negative to neutral. And then the reflection card is, have you made decisions out of fear? So sometimes, we are afraid to do things, or afraid to make decisions, or afraid to make things, to cut things away, because it's just much easier just to have them, just to have the status quo. But it's something that you might need to do. Even if you're afraid of it, it might be much better in the end. So again, scythe, very quick, can be 10 days, 10 weeks, 10 months, or October. Negative to neutral. And it could be liberation, by cutting away a pain, or cutting away pain, which is physical or emotional. So again, looking at the cards and looking with what's around them and how they're used and how they come up in your reading, is very important. All right, we're on card 11, and this is the card of the whip. Now, you will see this, and you see even here, this one is renamed rod instead of whip. And so, there's lots of reasons why people choose to rename this word, or rename, or use it in a different way. But the traditional meaning and the traditional symbol you see over here on Raina George's card with the whip. And so a whip can be punishment. It can be anger, physical violence, oppositions, explosive energy, internal quarrels, sex, or exercise. And here you see over on this side that we have Krampus here with the rod. And this Krampus, the story of Krampus is that he came around Christmas, around the holidays, and he was the one who punished the bad children. And so it was a way for parents to kind of keep their children in line. It was one of those, like, Santa Claus getting coal in your stocking. And so Krampus was like that. And so I think in the Wicked Tale of Lenormand, one of the points that the author made was that this symbol, the rod itself, is neither good or bad. It's how it's used. And the whip, the same way. It's something that you can use, and it can be used in any of these things. Anger, sex, quarrels. A lot of those things can be used for good or bad. Exercise. Exercise isn't good for you, but not if you push yourself too hard. And so the exercise and the connotation to sex is because the whip is that kind of repetition or rhythm. You see that down at the bottom, and so that's why it's the sex card in Lenormand. And here's my personal anecdote. This is me many years ago, and this was my horse, and this was the whip that I used, a dressage whip that I used with my horse. And just like that, it seemed very harsh, to have a whip and to, be smacking your horse with a whip. But when used as a tool that's used correctly and that's used judiciously, then it was a tool that I used. And just like, I mean, and there's lots of things with the horse riding and that we can talk about, but this was just my example because it was something that definitely could be overused and definitely by other people. I saw other people using whips and things, and it was something that was not used in a good way. So, but it can be just like here, this symbol, the rod is neither good nor bad. It's just how it's used. And so this again, it's something that happens very fast. So if you get this card, it's something that is that's going to happen very fast or has happened very quickly. It can be 11 days, 11 weeks, 11 months, or November. And it is a negative card and indicates, like I said, repetition or rhythm. And so that's that nuance into the card. All right, let's move on to the last card we're going to do in this class. And this is number 12. This is birds. Now, birds can be news or messages or information, phone calls, any kind of verbal communication, discussions, gossip, and dating. So this is here we see, and you'll see lots of different birds on cards. This one is this you see, I'm not sure what even these cards are. They look like little sparrows, I think. But over here, we see the ravens and crows in this card. So you'll see lots of different birds in different cards. And I think that when creators create their own symbolism for the deck, they use birds that mean something to them. But you'll see lots of different ones. And usually, they'll have their beak open and like they're talking to each other. And that's it. It's this, this is what I think of when I think of birds. This kind of talking and this kind of talking back and forth. It's not deep long conversations. It's more just communication, something that's quick, that's fast, that's getting the information there in a very quick way. And so here in the Wicked Tales, Lenormand, you see the ravens and the crows. And I like this here because, ravens and crows are both very smart animals and they are also very magical. So here it's speaking, and so it's communication, but communication has to have speaking and hearing. So you have to hear what the other person is saying. And when birds communicate with each other, they're communicating, and because the things that they're communicating are important. They're communicating with their mate, with their children, with the people around them, with other birds, telling them to stay away, things like that. So these things are important, and it's important for them, for whoever is there is listening. And so it's important, for us when we get the birds card that what are we needing to say, and how are we needing to listen. So again, it's a fast card, something that's happening very quickly, that's fast. It can be 12 days, 12 weeks, or 12 months, which is a year, or it can be December. And this is a neutral card. So this is one that's very much dependent on the cards around it. So if you had the birds and bouquet together, so you have the birds and you've got something that is is, information that's news, and you have the bouquet, which is very positive, which is appreciation. It might be somebody, being very appreciative of something that you've done for them. But you could get the birds with you could get the birds with clouds, and we did clouds last time. So you could get the birds with clouds, and with clouds, since that's more of something being obscured or something you're not sure of, then you're maybe have gotten the wrong message, or you're communicating and what you're communicating is not getting across, or it's getting lost in the communication, or your internet could go down, or something like that, because it could also mean television, radio, and internet, all these forms of communication, how we communicate these things with each other. And then the reflection part here is, how often do you say yes to something you really don't want to do? And a lot of times we do that. And the birds can kind of help you to do that, and to communicate what you want to communicate, and make sure that people are hearing you. So that is the cards 7 through 12. And in the book, on pages, it is page 269 in the Raven George book, to 269 to 274, you will find an exercise called the answer line. Now, this one is when you use 5 to 7 cards when you want a quick answer, or you want to do some fortune telling. You want, just something that's going to give you an answer. You want to pick 5 to 7 cards, always an odd number, so that you have the middle card is your focus, to the left is your past, and to the right is the future. And I do this mostly with 5 cards. That's my favorite one. If it's something a little bit longer, I might do 7 cards. But to me, the 5 cards, especially because you want something, this is something that's very quick. This is something that's going to be that you're kind of getting a quick answer to, like what should I do this weekend, or something like that. And so you don't want a whole lot of cards, and we'll go into that, the longer one in the box spread for the next class. Right now, I'm just going to do 5 cards. And there are 2 different ways that you can do this. You can choose a significator to put in the middle. So if you wanted to, get a message about, maybe a friend has not been communicating with you recently, and you were wondering, why. So you might put the birds in the middle, and then draw 2 cards for the left, and 2 cards for the right. And the 2 cards on the left would tell you, something that might be happening in the past that you didn't know about with this friend, and then something in the future. Maybe the person, you find out that that person's just been really busy at work, or something like that. And so you might use that significator as the birds in the middle, because it's something about communication. And there's lots of cards that, as we go along, that you'll see are specific cards that are commonly chosen as significators. And so you'll see that as we go along, like ship is a lot of times used as a significator for travel, because it has to do with travel. But you can pick your own. And so that's method 1. And then method 2, which is what I almost always use, and is draw the cards intuitively. Just shuffle all the cards up, lay them out, see what's in the middle, and that will kind of give you the focus for whatever you should be focusing on. So I'm going to do that right now, and I'll show you after I finish the slides, and then we'll do some together, and I'll kind of read an answer line together. So here, her message here for doing the answer line, and starting to really read the cards together, is focus, have a good intention, and redraw if necessary, and trust yourself. And so she is a big proponent of, if you draw the cards and something comes out and you're just not sure what it is, just pick them up, do it again. And there's nothing wrong with that. And some people are very, some that's okay for some people, and some people are like, no, this is the card that you drew. You can add more cards, but don't take them up, and you'll figure that out as you go along as well. All right. So, and this is just for class 5. So we're going to be doing cards 13, which is child, 14, which is fox, 15, which is bear, 16, which is stars, 17, which is stork, and 18, which is dog. And then we're going to be doing one of my favorite spreads, which is the box spread, which is on page 274 to 280. And this is a 3x3. So you lay out 3 cards, and then 3 cards. And it is really fun. So, but right now we're going to do an answer line. So let me stop the sharing. And then we're going to, and what I suggest for when you practice, just take the answer line that you have, or take the 6 cards that we just did, and do a few of those so that you kind of get all the cards at one time. But you'll have to use just 5 because we've only worked with 6. So I'm going to take these 6 cards that we've done, and I'm going to mix them up a little bit. And I just lay mine out. And some people lay theirs all down, face down, and then put them up at one time, or put the middle one up at one time, and then go from there. But you just have to figure out. I like to just lay mine out so that I can see them and read them all together. So I laid mine out, and I have snake in the middle. So this is my focus. So my focus, and here I'm just kind of looking at the cards and putting some keywords together without really asking a question. And you can practice with either one. So the focus, since this is my focus card, I know that something is a little bit deceptive here. The snake here can be something that is confusing, or something that's treacherous, something that I need to watch out for. So let's see what came before it. So I have, in the past, I have birds and scythe. So if I read this, it's like birds, so it's birds, scythe, and then snake. So if I look at those two, so there's something that's communicating that's been cut off. So something that in my past that I've been thinking about that has maybe felt treacherous, the communication has been cut off. And so I'm kind of wondering, why is that happening? What is it? And what is it about that communication that was cut off that might lead me to think that it was dangerous? So then I have the next card. So the next card is the rod, or the whip, with the bouquet. So looking at those going forward, so in the present, something in the past was, some communication was shut down, some communication was cut off, and I felt a little bit uneasy about it. And so going forward, I just need to know that this whip is something that is, maybe it was something that I didn't need to know anymore, because it just it was just the same message over and over again, that really it's like, you got it, you got the message, and you just need to go on with it and take it and appreciate it for what it is, and move on with it. And so that's how I would do, a reading with the answer line. So, take your cards and lay them out, lay the one in the middle, go back to the keywords, all the keywords that are here in the video. So look at those keywords, put one or two down, put one or two keywords for the scythe, one or two keywords for the birds, one or two keywords for the rod or whip, one or two keywords for the bouquet, and just read them all together and read what they say. And so that is a way that you can do the answer line as well. And so especially when you're learning and still learning about the meanings and learning the keywords, that's a really good way to do it because it is very much like a sentence. And I think that is one of the reasons I really like Lenormand cards because I was an English major and taught English and loved doing grammar and loved doing like conjugating verbs and sentences and things like that, and that was just so fun to me. And writing and using adjectives and things, and this is very similar to that. And so this is very similar to putting sentences together and building on it. And the great thing about here, you can build on it because as you do more and more readings, you're going to get more and more familiar with these cards. And it's going to be, just much more fun to do these readings. So that's an example of an answer line. And I'll take a picture of this one and put it in the description so you can kind of see all the 5 cards together and how I went about doing the answer line with them. Now, once you do that and you kind of have these 5 cards, then go back and start putting in the 6 cards that we did before. So take all those first 12 cards, mix them up together, put your 5 cards out, or maybe you want to practice, practice with the significator. So put one, pick one that you want to find something out about, and pick one of those and put it in the middle, and then put some cards on either side and see what message you get. Ask a question like, like that, what am I going to, what should I do this weekend? Or, what, what, what do I need to be on the lookout for over the holidays, or something like that, something that you can get an answer to. And you can also do this as you're doing, like, reading a book or watching a TV show or watching a movie. You can pause and you can say, what should this person do next? And get an answer from that way. And so you can do it. And so if you don't want to come up with a question, you can definitely put it in the context of a book or a magazine or something that you're interested in, and do it that way. So there's lots of ways, and it's lots of fun ways to work with the cards. So that is it. So if you are on this video and you haven't gone and watched the other ones, I'll put the links to those to the introductory videos, and especially the first one where we go through the first 6 cards, so you can go and find those. And like I said, and hopefully in about a couple of weeks, I'll have the next class out, which will be class 5, and we'll be doing the box spread, which is very fun. So make sure you like, subscribe, so that you get notified when the next video comes out. And I hope that you have as much fun with playing with these Lenormand cards as I have, and let me know how it goes. I would love to hear it. I will see you again in the next class. Bye.